Zibby here, and I have my analyst for the day joining me on this segment. As always, we love it when you're part of the conversation. So let us know what your thoughts are. The WhatsApp number is 0809 4440981. You can also tweet at Smooth981. And we're streaming the show live on YouTube as well. So just search for us on YouTube, Smooth981. And you can even post a comment on the live stream. Good morning, Mr. C, and good morning to you, Cheta, as well.
Good morning.
Good morning, Cheta. Good morning, Lagos.
All right,
Good
well,
morning.
let's get straight
Again.
in. And we're kicking this off with this day. 11 governors elected on the platform of the All Progressives Congress met with President Buhari yesterday at the State House in Abuja. And this was over the lingering cash crunch in the country following the redesign. And they've demanded for the concurrent use of the new and old notes up until the end of the year.
Thank you, Zibby. So this is a very illuminating experience, and it's instructive of the disposition of the APC governors. So yesterday, 11 of them got themselves together and went to see the president and demanded that the Naira redesign policy, which is currently in place, be amended so in such a manner that both the new notes and the old notes will continue to exist side by side until the end of the year. And expectedly, the president rejected the demands and rather told them that within the next 7 days, he would be meeting with the CBN and other stakeholders to ensure that there is a lot of respite from the ongoing stress. Now, it's instructive to see the APC governors assemble when their direct interests are threatened. When the students were at home for 8 months because of the ASU strike. And thanks to Rufai Oseni of Arise News, because he did point this out. There's no record of them going to meet the president to resolve anything. We've had this lingering fuel scarcity. I don't recall any visit by them to the president to try and get a resolution. But now elections are here. Some of them are seeking elections, either re-elections to the same offices or elections to fresh offices. And they now believe they're now supposedly speaking on behalf of Nigerians that they supposedly represent. Now, there's no going back on this policy, and it's instructive to note and commend the president that for once he's not wavering. The truth of the matter is Nigeria needs to go cashless. Yes, whenever we do decide, if we argue about the timing, whenever we do decide to start, we'll still have these teething problems. But after the teething problems, we will get along just fine because we're just blessed with this natural ability to adapt. So what it
Really?
is, this matter has not been helped by the fact that some banks have been up to some dodgy practices. So there was a video where an ATM machine was opened up and you could see the new Naira notes still in the bundles unwrapped. And the officials were claiming that the ATM wasn't working, but that's not the case. So yes, there are a few sharp practices here and there, but this policy is here to stay. And Nigerians should support this administration in ensuring that we get around this. Now, let me give you some very interesting economic insights. In 2020, Nigeria spent 59 billion naira printing cash, 2020. In the same year, Oyo State government only raised 51 billion from internally generated revenue. You see, one of the CBN's policies this year is to reduce the cost of cash handling. And what is cash handling? It means it includes a process whereby commercial banks and deposit money banks have to move excess cash from their vaults to the CBN every day. And we see those convoys moving about. You have to get the van itself that holds the cash, then you have to pay for 2 escort vehicles with policemen. Now that is a lot of money. We should look to move towards an economy where there's less cash, more digital transactions, more digital presence. And maybe this will encourage our local small scale and mid-sized businesses to fully embrace this cashless policy. In Kenya, it's worked, and it's only going to work in Nigeria if we do start the process. We cannot continue to run each time a process wants to start. Picture someone has a tooth problem, goes to the dentist. Yes, the process of taking out the bad tooth will be painful, but after that, there will be long-standing relief. It's also like taking an injection for malaria. Yes, the initial prick might be painful or will be painful, but after that comes the relief. We must get over this teething period and we will all be fine. And we have to be a bit more patient. That's the truth.
All right. Well, let us know what your thoughts are. 0809 444 0981. And let's move on to the next story. This one comes from Punch. Now, Lout, by name Daramola Olarewaju, has been accused of causing the death of a bus conductor while trying to collect what is being called a 500 naira police fee. Now, Olarewaju is alleged to be working or was alleged to be working for some policemen attached to the Ketu Police Station division when this unfortunate incident happened on the 3rd of February. Now, an eyewitness said the suspect had dragged the conductor from his bus, and as the victim fell, he was crushed by an oncoming vehicle.
So there are so many things wrong with this story. I think the first thing is the first question I should ask is how exactly was this Olarewaju fellow working for the police? I mean, was he an informant? Was he? I mean, it's clear in the story what he was. He was meant to help them collect Roger. Um, but the fact that he was working for the police is a big part of the problem of state-backed extortion that has become prevalent in this city. And it has led to a complete sense of impunity among the louts. They use the word loud, tout, whatever it is. We can't be having this kind of state-backed extortion. Um, it's a very simple thing. When you have people collecting something that they call a 500 naira police fee, those people will need to be paid by the police. We don't. This is a completely unaccountable money collection process. And then, more importantly, the drivers and conductors who are the victims of such harassment will pass this cost on to the commuters. So the questions that come out of it: who imposed this police fee? Who approved it? Where does the money go? What benefits does this money accrue to drivers and to commuters? You can't have this kind of state-backed protection racket in in a city that wants that claims to be a mega city. You just can't. It shouldn't be acceptable. And then we have a situation in this scarcity period with rising inflation, and then the very police that are meant to be protecting us are actually making life more uncomfortable for us. Now, there's a big part of this that the media has to play. They have the name of the alleged perpetrator. They have the name of the victim. From the story, it is clear that they have multiple eyewitnesses. The driver of the bus in which the poor, unfortunate Michael was dragged from and killed has shown that he's very willing to talk. The media can't allow this to die. This story has to be followed up to its logical conclusion. We have seen too many stories, unfortunately, in this country where people directly related to the police or involved with the police will be arrested just to keep everybody happy for a while and then quietly released. It shouldn't be allowed to happen. A message needs to be sent out. If this is proven, the story also implies that the driver of the car that hit Michael was also arrested. Mr. C will be in a better position to speak about this, but personally, I would say he's not guilty. Everybody who spoke to the Punch were very clear that the Olarewaju fellow dragged Michael out of the bus and into the path of the oncoming vehicle. So Everything is on Olanrewaju and the policemen who put him there in the first place. But then the question becomes, does the government care? That's a big question.
Mr. C, so from a legal perspective, with the driver who unfortunately found the late person thrown right in front of his car, should he have been arrested?
So I think it will boil down to a question of fact. So one, at what speed was he moving? Was he moving within the legally permissible speed limit? That's one. Two, from the way he was driving, could he have or did he take any steps to try to avoid? So for example, screech marks on the tarmac would show that, okay, he tried to avoid it. But from the facts, like Cheta has said, a human body was thrown onto the path of an incoming vehicle. There's little to nothing that can be done. And what I would advise is all the legal aid groups to come to the aid of this driver, because he's about to go down for something that isn't his fault. And I would not be shocked or surprised to see that he's charged with manslaughter, even though from the facts of this story, there's nothing to pin on him. So it's just for him to get good legal representation and he'll get out of this. The cops and this Olanrewaju fellow are the ones who should go down. And Olanrewaju should go down for murder, because the natural outcome of tossing a human being in front of oncoming traffic is that you want the person to die. That's the only outcome that would have resulted. And then the policemen who allegedly engaged him are parties to murder, and they can also be charged as accomplices and accessories after the fact to the murder charge, and they can also be convicted of murder. So this is something, like Cheta said, should not be buried or swept under the carpet, and we're waiting to see what happens.
All right, let's go on to WhatsApp and take a few messages. This one is from Philip, and he says, the Olanrewaju action is a common practice here in Lagos and on the highways at Isolo every other day. You see officers in conjunction with these sorts of fellows. And Kunle says, my worry about this push for a cashless economy is, are our digital platforms running optimally and available in every part of the country, however remote? I still have a POS error pending for over a week with my money hanging from the bank. And this one is from Yinka. Okay, Yinka, I'm going to come to your message, but let's take a quick break. And when we return, we'll continue the conversation. This is Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1.
First Bank. Music is about soul healing vibes that transcend you with lyrical grooves, lifting you into love as you flow through. My music is frequency. Love music, love life. You're listening to Mind News. In every city, that's so diligent community. Money agents are making all the difference, making things easier for all, making extra cash as a reward. You too can be a first money agent, putting smiles on faces, and extra cash in the pocket. You save money, don't be yours.
So speaking about that, Mr. C, when there's a murder charge, there has to be a motive, right? But what is the motive?
Not necessarily.
Oh, really?
No, there has to be. No, she's correct, Cheta. But so, yes, for every crime, there must be a motive than a physical act. Okay, so when you throw someone in front of a moving bus, were you planning to bless it?
And so that's the point. Then okay, my understanding of motive in this case is he didn't set out to kill him.
Have to go on.
No, let's continue after.
Smooth 98.1. This is Freshly Pressed, and we're looking at the stories making the headlines across the country this morning. Just before we went on the break, we did speak a bit about the unfortunate incident that led to the death of a bus conductor. But now we're going on to The Guardian. Now, the Chairman, House of Representatives Committee on Diaspora, Tolulope Akonde Sadipe, has called out the CBN governor over the Naira policy. Now, she states that the petrol scarcity caused by smuggling of products to neighboring countries is being compounded by the shortage of cash in the economy due to the CBN policy. And Senator Nicholas from PDP Ondo Central has actually gone a step further, calling for the arrest and prosecution of the CBN governor.
It's instructive how our Nigerian politicians always continue to betray their basest motives. Now, like I said earlier in the first story, when there were critical issues that affected Nigerians, they were very quiet. Now, they're hiding under what appears to be a collective problem to really air what their personal grievances are. Now, what's irking the senator? That he pulled up to a bank on Friday, presented his check across the counter, and he didn't get any money. Hello, wake up, you're not the only one. So what's special about you because you're a senator? No. Now, the representative who is the head of the committee on the diaspora also complained, saying that with the cash shortage and then the fuel scarcity, that it's just a lot to bear for the people. And then she then alleged that there was massive fuel smuggling that was also contributing to the fuel scarcity. Now, having said that, at the end of the day, right, let's look beyond the immediate problems. Do we want Nigeria to become the nation it should be? Because every great policy will have some sort of issues at the beginning. And let's not forget, people who are used to the current system, the current chaos, the current turmoil, would naturally fight back. Now, whether they like it or not, we're moving towards a cashless policy. And I think long-term, that is what will pay Nigeria. They're not averting their minds to the fact that, just as the CBN governor said, there was about 3.something trillion of Naira notes all over the place, but only about less than 1 trillion was within the banking system, meaning the rest was outside. At least 66% was outside the banking system. That simply cannot continue to hold. So rather than continue to say people are suffering, there is no day the Nigerian man is not suffering. I'm not advocating for suffering. I'm not saying suffering is good. But we must understand this has to be done. We cannot run away from it. And I note the comments of the politicians. The representative member said, fifth columnist within the ruling APC and opposition elements. Please, that is neither here nor there. If you're not bold enough to name them, stop disturbing our ears with speculation. Be courageous enough to identify them, and tell us what roles they played. Now, the senator called for the arrest of the CBN governor. It's not happening. The president is solidly behind the CBN government, and he's solidly behind this policy. And we must remember, 40 years ago, he also changed the narrative. It's not going to happen. We're going forward with this. And the sooner people wake up and embrace their reality, the happier they will be.
Yinka says that there's no Naira is not really the main conversation. The main conversation is that our bank's electronic transactions are, well, not great. Even USSD mediums are terrible. That's what we need to talk about. For all bank heads of IT should be relieved of their roles, because it's obvious we are not built for this brand. I don't need cash. I just want the transfers to go through.
There's a capacity problem that people are not talking about. Over the last year and a half, 2 years, the IT departments of most banks have been gutted because people are leaving the country. I think that's something that needs to be talked about. I mean, even NIBS has been heavily impacted by this as well.
Mr. C?
I agree totally with Cheta. I was going to say that, but Cheta beat me to it.
Daisy says the touts are getting out of hand. On Agungi Road, you have 5 to 6 different groups collecting money from the buses. They argue in the middle of the road, destroy their buses, and attack them physically sometimes. I never thought I would ever feel sympathy for downfall drivers. Okay. Tokoni Douglas says dragging someone from a moving vehicle shows intention to cause grievous bodily harm. Once that is established in court as directly related to cause of death, it is murder. And Nero Cello says governors didn't meet the president to find solutions on insecurity, fuel crisis, or other major problems affecting the country because they are not really affected. Here they are fighting against the Naira redesign. It says a lot about these same people. Okay, let's move on to the next story. This one comes from Business Day. And micro pension slows on weak economy. The micro pension plan, launched in March 2019 as part of the president's second term campaign promise, was projected to increase the retirement savings account from 8.5 million at the time to 20 million in 5 years, I beg your pardon, but 4 years down the line, the RSA has marginally increased, with the MPP having just about 89,000 RSA holders. Now, according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, 63% of persons living within Nigeria are multidimensionally poor.
So I think I'll start this with a pet peeve. It's wrong to attribute the micro pensions to Buhari's second term campaign. And I knew this very well because between 2014 and 2016, I worked on campaigns with both PENOP, the Pension Fund Operators Association of Nigeria, and PENCOM itself on micro pensions. And it was discussed at length. Now, it's important for listeners to know what micro pensions are. Micro pensions basically is a pension scheme that is targeted at people in the informal sector of the economy, and the informal sector of the economy is the larger part of Nigeria's economy. Those of us who are in formal employments are in a minority in this country. The key risk to micro pensions, as we are seeing, is the poor state of the economy and the poor state of Nigerians in general. This business history includes interesting data from the multidimensional poverty index survey, which shows that 63% of Nigerians are multidimensionally poor. So again, it's now important, what is multidimensionally poor? First, poverty is usually defined for most people. Most times that you hear people talk about poverty, it's one dimension that they use to measure poverty, which is income. So when you don't have money, you're poor. But there are multiple dimensions to poverty, and multi-dimensional poverty encompasses all of these deprivations experienced by a certain kind of poor person. So let's put it like this: I've just paid school fees, so money no day until salary show. At the point I'm poor, but I'm not multi-dimensionally poor. But when it is you don't have money, you don't have access to healthcare, you have a lack of education, your living standards are bad, you are disempowered, your quality of work is really bad, there is constant threat of violence, like for example what's happened to Michael the conductor, and then you live in areas where things are environmentally hazardous, so many things, then you are multidimensionally poor. And 63% of Nigerians fall in this category. Now, my organization, SBM Intelligence, did a study back in 2019 that showed that your average Nigerian spends 63% of his income on food alone. Just food. Then you now had the other things that the remaining 37% of income was spent on. And one of the interesting things that we found back then was that too many people in the country do not put money aside for rents. Instead, they hope to get one runs or the other during the course of the year that will help them gather rent money. So when you have those kind of things, how will such people think of putting money in micro pensions? They will not. And unfortunately, because of this, so it speaks to the kind of policy incongruence and policy inconsistencies of the outgoing governments, that they are trying to claim credit for micro pensions, but their policies have actively pushed more and more people into a position where they cannot afford to even think of micro pensions. That's the problem. We don't have policies that are actively geared towards making sure that people come out um, of poverty. So you can't. So by the time you have those kind of policies, then you are looking at it's all esoteric.
All right. Abbas Aladapo says the lawmakers were not quiet on the ASU strike. The National Assembly met with ASU and government several times. Any politician can easily get that money as much as he wants without even going to the bank. We shouldn't turn a blind eye to that. This policy is hurting people and businesses right now. And Gab says, if we think we are suffering now, I wonder what we would think when the subsidy is completely removed. Okay. And Cisco Delgado says Nigeria's problems is like a compound interest. Let's move on to the punch. We have just a couple of minutes for this one. The Lagos State government is urging residents to create retention and storage amenities in their homes to help in flood management across the states.
Okay, so very quickly, I read the story and it raised a number of questions for me. First of all, what is the nature of these retention and storage amenities they want Lagosians to put in their homes? That's one. Two, where are they going to find the space to do it? Because I want to believe these amenities will require some amount of space. And it is well known in Lagos that accommodation or housing is a big problem because the demand far outstrips the supply. And that is evident by the rising rates, rising rent rates all across the state. Then to the all-important question, the big elephant in the room. You want Lagosians to create retention and storage amenities. Clearly, these amenities will cost money. Where is this money supposed to come from? Cheta has just given us facts which suggest the average Nigerian spends about 63% of his income on food alone. So where exactly is this money supposed to come from? And then when I read further, the PS for the Ministry of Environment, specifically the Office of Drainage Services and Water Resources, is quoted as saying there is a need for a drainage infrastructure master plan to combat the problem of flooding in Lagos. Now, I find this very interesting. We have been regaled with stories of some grand Lagos master plan for years, if not decades. How is it that this grand Lagos master plan does not have a sub-plan that deals with flooding? So, and he goes on to say that going forward with new buildings, they will ensure that these amenities are incorporated into the buildings. Now that is fantastic going forward. So in places like Lagos Island, where the buildings are literally kissing themselves, where exactly are these amenities going to be put? So there isn't a lot of clarity on what these amenities are or where you want to put, but more importantly, where is the funding coming from? Because Nigerians are really struggling. And you cannot impose a further burden on them when you have failed to do your bit as a state and as a regulator. So it will be interesting to see how this develops. I'll continue to monitor this space and update with further developments.
All right, I'm just going to read two more messages. This one is from Babs. Babs says, when the Japa syndrome started, we didn't know it was going to impact the banking system, amongst others. Now we know. The Agbero menace on Agungi Jakonde axis of Lekki makes the area look like a ghetto. They jump in front of buses and it adds to the traffic. It really wasn't like this back in the day. Obi Michael says, the Olaranwaja incident has become a normal thing even in Apapa, Coconut, Boundary area, and lots of places, where you see police officers sitting down on one side of the road while others, like Olaranwaju, harass bus drivers to collect money. It's a shame. Well, that's all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. Thank you so much, Cheta, and thank you so much, Mr. C, for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
That is it for Freshly Pressed, but do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.
First bang.
Thanks, Cheta.
No wahala.
Cheta?
Yep.
We're still streaming.